for the LSTC Working with Speech on the Computer course. This time a very quick look at how to divide longer files, longer audio files into smaller ones using Praat. We've seen a similar procedure using Audacity. Today let's do it using Praat. So there, let's run Praat, open, read from file, select your large audio file along with its associated text grid or annotation, open, select both in the objects window, extract non-empty intervals, OK, and these are your small files on the basis of the annotation. Now you can select each one by one and go to save as WAV file, and note that the name is already given to you on the basis of the annotation. So there, probably less than a minute. But of course this all depends on the annotation. So let's now do this much more slowly with some commentary. I'm going to select all of these objects here on the left hand side in the Praat objects window and press remove at the bottom left. So remember, this is Praat objects window where most of those interesting things happen, and this is Praat's picture window, which we don't need at the moment, so let's just close it. In the objects window you perform all the normal operations, including, for example, opening files. So let's go to open, read from file, and the procedure that I called less smart on Moodle is the following. You'd open the large audio file. This is actually the file that we created earlier on by concatenating the smaller files with the individual Polish sentences into one larger file, and go to view and edit. This opens a special editor which is called the sound editor in Praat, which looks like any audio editor with the waveform display at the top. If we now select a fragment, one of the sentences, and press cell here in the bottom left hand corner, or if you want you can press Control N, we will zoom into the selected fragment, sentence in this case. Now I'm going to play it back by pressing on this bar at the bottom.
Jak wiesz, twój login to bat, Elizo.
Okay, this is the word but, which is of interest to us, the one that is the target word in this sentence with the Polish vowel a. So now I'm going to press here.
But.
That's the word. I can also press the tab button on your keyboard. So there, and that's what we want to in a let's say measurement situation. That's probably what we'd want to extract to smaller files. Maybe not. You could do the measurements from the larger files. Actually, it would be easier, especially if you do it manually, but let's imagine that there is a need to extract this fragment to a smaller file. Now, of course, we can, not of course, we can now go to File. Right from within the sound editor, we can go to File and save selected sound as WAV file. So that's what most normal people would do, right away. You can notice that there are already, right from here, there are already options to choose different bit depths, 24 and 32 bits. The default is 16. 3 other sound formats, and you can also do extract selected sound. What does that do? If you press that, you will notice that a new object is created in the objects list. If you view it, that's the word but on its own. So we've extracted the sound to a separate object, but that isn't yet a separate file. So in order to make it a separate file, you'd have to you'd have to save it. You'd have to go to save it. But of course, it's easier to save from within here. Note that probably in many situations you'd want to adjust the edges of the selection to fall on the nearest zero crossing, as we did in Audacity, so that the edges are clean, so that the cutting is done at the place where the waveform goes through zero. That is done in Praat separately for the beginning and end of selection, so this is less user-friendly than in Audacity, and it requires 2 mouse presses, several mouse presses or 2 keyboard presses. So let's move the start of selection to nearest zero crossing, and let's move the end of selection to nearest zero crossing. So now we're ready, and we can do File, Select, save selected sound as WAV file. Yippee. We can give it a name, for example, but, because that's the word, save. Oh yeah, that file already exists because, of course, I was testing the procedure earlier, but so let's just replace it. There. But this is, as I said, on Moodle, the less smart procedure. So let's close down this editor. Let's remove the this unnecessary object, and let's open the associated annotation, as I said, text grid. What the heck does that mean? Well, actually, this annotation, this text grid, comes from the concatenation procedure, where you might remember in Praat what we did was concatenate and concatenate recoverably, and the second procedure, concatenate recoverably, gave us an annotation, a text grid, which actually showed where the original files were. Let's have a look. Let's select both of these in the objects window and press View and Edit. And what we get is a sound editor at the top, but at the bottom we've got the annotation. It says text grid Polish words, so it's a text grid editor. This bottom, as they say, tier of annotation, this tier with the funny codes, is contains the original file names and was created automatically by Praat when concatenating. Very, very useful. For navigation, it's very useful, especially if you're dealing with hundreds and thousands of sentences. The top tier, this one, I created myself just a couple of minutes ago, and I wanted to mark the individual target words in it. Here I made a mistake, so let's delete this. But other than that, if we go to the small fragments, we're going to see that this is one of the target words, bit in this particular case. If I press cell here in the lower left hand corner, or if I press Ctrl N, I can zoom in like I did without the annotation. So many of the aspects of this editor work like a normal sound editor. So this is the word. If I click, I can click around in the annotation, and as you can see, the yellow means that it becomes selected. I can now click here,
Bit.
and that's the word. So again, I can go to File, Save Selected Sound as WAV file. Why not? I can, the annotation allows me to navigate in the file very easily, even to search for stuff, but that's something that we're going to discuss later on when doing annotations separately. So for the time being, we assume that we get the annotation from somewhere, for example from the corpus where you got your recordings, or maybe from a semi-automated annotation procedure, and so on and so on. So now I'm going to show you the smartest approach in some senses to doing this, namely now that I've got the two the two objects selected here, the sound and the text grid, I can go to extract, and I can extract those intervals right here from the Praat objects window without going into the sound editor. So now if I do extract all intervals, you'll see from tier number 1, so that's the tier where I had the words annotated. Okay, yippee, about 30 objects, and many of those, so for example this first one contains,
Jak wiesz, twój login to
the portion of the first sentence before the first word, then the first word itself,
Bat,
and then the ending of the sentence.
Elizo.
Cool, but of course that's not what we want, because then you'd need to sift and browse through this long list by hand. No, let's automate it a little bit more. Let's remove all of these objects from the list. Let's select these two once again, and you must have noticed that extract has two other options, non-empty intervals and intervals where. So let's first try this. And that's exactly what we want, just the words, because I didn't annotate anything else in that tier. And that's one of the simplest approaches. If you just want to use the tier to find very specific bits of audio in a longer file, that's the simplest approach to take. Just annotate what you want to be able to find, not everything else. And now, of course, if I click this first word,
Bat,
Yeah, I can go to save and save as WAV file. The name is already given for me, so there. Note that you'd have to go through the list one by one and save those files one by one, so there's still a manual component that is error prone and time consuming. You can automate that using scripts, and we're going to see that later. But for the time being, it's still quite a bit quicker than actually digging through the audio file by hand. And also, let's now get rid of all of these objects. One final thing that I wanted to show is the following. Select both, extract intervals where. So this is a regex kind of procedure where you've got the tier number and you've got this command here. Extract all intervals whose label is equal to or not equal to, contains, and so on and so on, the text, let's say, I don't know, BAT. But in Polish, okay. And as you can see, this is actually a little bit more useful because as you can see they're numbered at the end, so the files that you'll be saving are actually a little bit more descriptive. Whether you want that or not depends on your preferences. But anyway, from the long file of many sentences, when you've got a good annotation, you're able to extract selected bits, selected words, for example, in just a few mouse clicks in Praat. Pretty powerful. And this can be still further automated, as we're going to see later. So there, extracting audio from larger audio files using Praat. Thank you.